Life doesn't wait. That's one of its most consistent traits. While you're deciding, hesitating, procrastinating, life is still in motion. The clock doesn't slow down because you started late. The world doesn't pause to give you time to catch up. It moves with or without you. And the opportunities that exist today may not exist tomorrow. That's the reality. When you start late, whether it's in your career, your education, your health, or your personal development, you are automatically at a disadvantage in terms of time. Time is one of the few things we can't manufacture more of. You can earn more money, you can gain more experience, you can even rebuild relationships. But you can't go back and plant seeds in the spring once summer has already arrived. That season's gone. And if you didn't plant, there's no harvest to collect. So what do you do if you've delayed? If you've wandered while others stayed focused? You recognize that now, to catch up, you've got to do more. Move faster, be sharper, think deeper. It's not unfair, it's just the cost of delay. You made the decision, whether consciously or unconsciously, to pause. Now the decision must be made to move, and not just move casually, but move with urgency. There's a certain pressure that comes with this. You can't coast anymore. There's no luxury of easing into routines or learning at a leisurely pace. Every hour matters. Every distraction becomes costly. Every moment wasted is a moment you don't get back. That's the trade-off when you start behind the pack. And here's where most people get stuck. They look at the gap between where they are and where they should be, and they get discouraged. But here's the thing. The gap can be closed. Not through wishing, not through complaining, but through movement. Focused, intentional, accelerated movement. You might have to double your efforts. Where others are reading 1 book a month, you might need to read 3. Where others are practicing a skill for an hour a day, you might need to carve out 2 or more. You may have to say no to things others still say yes to, because comfort is costly when you're behind. This doesn't mean you live in panic or burn yourself out. It means you live with purpose. Every day is treated like it counts because it does. You don't wander through your weeks hoping something will change. You show up with energy, with hunger, with a desire not just to match the pace of others, but to exceed it, because that's what's required. Starting late doesn't make you less worthy. It doesn't make you less capable, but it does require more from you in the short term. It demands that you become someone who doesn't waste motion, someone who makes decisions quickly and acts on them immediately, someone who doesn't just wish they had started earlier, but who commits to making today matter more than yesterday ever did. The truth is, when you accept that the game has been going on without you, you stop waiting for a perfect moment to begin. You start running, not because it's easy, not because it's comfortable, but because you finally understand that the race isn't going to slow down for you. And if you want to be in it, you've got to move, and you've got to move now. Starting early creates a powerful advantage, and it's not just about time. It's about momentum, experience, and compound growth. When you begin early, you give yourself the opportunity to fail, learn, and recover while the stakes are still relatively low. The earlier you start, the more you learn. The more you learn, the better decisions you make, and better decisions compounded over time lead to a life that's not only more successful, but also more stable and less stressful. Early starters get a head start on building habits. And as any seasoned achiever will tell you, habits are what carry you when motivation fades. If someone begins to discipline themselves at age 20, reading, exercising, budgeting, investing, they're laying a foundation that supports them for the rest of their lives. By the time they reach 30, those habits are second nature. Meanwhile, someone who begins at 30 has to learn the very same lessons, but under the pressure of lost time and mounting responsibilities. Momentum is another gift the early starter enjoys. Once you begin moving in the right direction, even small progress starts to build on itself. It's easier to keep going once you've been going. Success, just like failure, has a compounding effect. You gain confidence with every small win. You get noticed. Opportunities come your way not just because you're good, but because you've been showing up consistently. The longer you've been in motion, the harder it becomes for inertia to take over. Starting early also gives you margin, the space to make mistakes. When you begin working on your goals early in life, you have time to fail and recover. You have time to adjust course, find your strengths, build resilience. A 20-year-old who starts a business and fails can try again at 22 and again at 24. But a 45-year-old just starting their first venture may not feel like they have the luxury of trying and failing multiple times. The clock feels heavier. Another overlooked advantage of starting early is how people perceive you. Someone who shows discipline and direction early in life gains the trust and attention of mentors, leaders, investors, and collaborators. When people see consistency in your actions over time, they begin to bet on you. And when others bet on you, you gain access to resources and relationships that accelerate your growth even more. The early starter also enjoys the benefit of seeing patterns sooner. You start noticing how the world works, the rhythms of finance, the truths of human behavior, the cycles of your industry, before others do. And when you recognize patterns, you can anticipate rather than react. You make decisions with insight instead of instinct. That kind of foresight becomes an edge, especially in competitive environments. Of course, starting early doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. It doesn't guarantee success, but it gives you time to adjust. It gives you the ability to grow into the person you're becoming rather than rush to catch up. It gives you the quiet, steady progress that doesn't always make noise, but always makes impact. And here's the thing, those who started early didn't necessarily have more talent or better circumstances. They just started. They read the book. They made the call. They saved a little money. They chose the uphill path before life forced it on them. And by the time others wake up and realize the cost of delay, the early starters are already living the reward. Regret has a heavy pull. It's like an anchor that keeps you tied to what you didn't do, where you didn't go, and who you didn't become. But regret doesn't move you forward. It doesn't add hours to the day or opportunities to your future. It only drains your energy, robs your focus, and distracts you from the one thing you still have control over, what you do next. Everyone has regrets. Everyone has moments they wish they could undo, choices they'd take back, time they would use differently if given the chance. That's part of being human. But where people go wrong is when they choose to live in those regrets instead of learning from them. You can visit the past, but you shouldn't live there. The longer you stay stuck in what could be, the less progress you'll make toward what can still be. Regret is a signal, not a sentence. It tells you something valuable, that your actions didn't line up with your values, that you weren't as present, as prepared, or as intentional as you could have been. And that's a good signal if you use it. If you take the message and apply it forward, you grow, you become wiser, you start living with a sharper awareness. But if you sit in regret, replaying your missteps like a broken record, you lose time all over again, except this time, you're doing it consciously. There's a better way. Instead of letting regret dominate your mental space, convert it into responsibility. Own your past, not as something to mourn, but as something to build from. You can't edit yesterday, but you can shape tomorrow. And every time you choose action over rumination, you take a piece of regret and turn it into resolve. People often think that reflection means regret, but they're different. Reflection is when you pause and ask, what did I learn? Regret just says, I wish it hadn't happened. One moves you forward, the other holds you back. Life rewards those who learn fast and keep moving, the ones who keep falling forward, not because they never made mistakes, but because they stopped giving those mistakes permanent power. The truth is, results don't come from wishing the past had been different. They come from deciding that today is not going to be a repeat of yesterday. They come from action, small, consistent, deliberate action. Action that says, I may be behind, but I'm not done. That's how momentum is built, not with emotion, but with effort. Not with self-pity, but with self-discipline. You'll notice the most successful people often have painful chapters in their stories. Missed opportunities, bad decisions, time wasted. But what separates them isn't that they had a perfect run, it's that they didn't stop at regret. They took the pain, the disappointment, the loss, and they leveraged it. They let it wake them up, fuel them, push them to grow. Regret became a teacher, not a prison. It's easy to sit and think about all the time you've wasted. It's easy to scroll back through your memories and count the cost. But the only thing that matters now is what you do with the time that remains. You can either relive the past or rewrite the future. But you can't do both at the same time. So the moment you realize you've fallen behind, don't pause to mourn the delay. Move. Turn regret into responsibility, and responsibility into results. The faster you do that, the faster regret loses its grip. When you start late, you don't have the option of easing in gradually. You've already lost time, and time, once spent, doesn't come back. That means the pace must be different, the approach must be different, and most importantly, the level of discipline and urgency must rise significantly. You're not playing catch-up with people, you're playing catch-up with time, and that's a much more serious race. Discipline is no longer a choice, it becomes a necessity. The time for excuses, for emotional reasoning, for waiting until you feel ready is over. You have to do what needs to be done, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient. Because when you've fallen behind, comfort is the very thing that will keep you there. Comfort becomes a trap. It whispers to you, "It's okay, take it slow." But that's a luxury you can no longer afford. Every day must be treated with intention. You start late, you double down on structure. You plan your mornings before you go to sleep. You decide the night before what your priorities are for the next day. You eliminate distractions, not because you're more disciplined than others, but because you have less room for error. You don't scroll mindlessly or waste hours in indecision. You don't get the luxury of drifting. You must direct everything. Urgency becomes your new standard. Not panic, not desperation, but urgency, calm, focused urgency. A mindset that says, I've got no time to waste, and I've got ground to cover. This urgency fuels your decision making. You don't debate every step, you take it. You don't question whether or not you feel like working, you work. Because every moment you hesitate, someone else is moving forward, and every moment you delay, the gap between where you are and where you want to be gets wider. This kind of discipline isn't about being hard on yourself, it's about being honest with yourself. Honest about what it's going to take. Honest about the effort required to rebuild, to reposition, and to rise. It's easy to get discouraged, to say, I should have started earlier, but that thinking won't carry you forward. What will carry you is a commitment to show up with consistency even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. And here's the reality. Most people who are ahead of you didn't do anything magical. They were just consistent longer. They didn't take long breaks. They didn't wait for motivation. They simply acted on what they knew, day after day. That's what you're aiming to replicate. Only now, at a more intense level, you compress time by increasing your focus and eliminating waste. Late starters have to study harder, practice more often, and be more mindful of their energy. You may need to sacrifice more than someone who had a head start. You may have to say no to things you used to say yes to. You may have to turn down distractions that others can still indulge in. Why? Because your margin for error is smaller. You're making up for what was lost, and that demands a different pace. But this also builds something in you that early starters don't always develop: grit. When you operate with urgency and self-discipline, you become tougher, sharper, more resilient. You learn how to create movement without waiting on ideal circumstances. You don't just move faster, you move smarter, because you've seen what delay costs, and you're no longer willing to pay that price. So yes, when you start late, you need more discipline, more urgency, not for punishment, but for progress. Because the time to wait is past. The time to act is now. Pain is inevitable, whether it's the pain of effort or the pain of regret. It's part of the process of becoming something more. The key is choosing the pain that leads somewhere, because the truth is both growth and stagnation hurt, but only one moves you forward. And when you're starting late, the pain will feel more intense, more immediate, and more constant. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It means you're stretching. It means you're finally moving. There's a cost to success, not just in time, but in discomfort. Waking up early when your body wants to sleep, saying no to distractions when your mind craves entertainment, showing up with energy when you're tired, practicing a skill for the 100th time while others are relaxing. That's not easy. That's pain. But it's a productive pain, the kind that builds something, the kind that refines your character and prepares you for more. The mistake many people make is thinking they can grow without discomfort, that progress should feel smooth and painless. But anything worth building comes with friction. The body aches in the gym before it becomes strong. The mind struggles with new ideas before it becomes sharp. The emotions resist change before they settle into maturity. It's all part of the process. And if you avoid the pain, you avoid the growth. Now, the pain of regret, that's a different story. That's the ache of missed opportunity, of knowing you could have done more, tried harder, shown up sooner. And it doesn't go away on its own. It lingers. It weighs on your confidence and eats away at your motivation. That pain isn't productive. It's paralyzing. It keeps you in cycles of guilt and hesitation. But here's the good news. You can replace it. You can trade the pain of regret for the pain of discipline. You can choose the discomfort that builds instead of the one that destroys. And when you start late, that choice becomes even more important. You don't have the cushion of time to keep putting things off. You can't afford to wait for the perfect moment or the right mood. You must lean into the work, knowing it will be hard, but also knowing it will be worth it. The effort you put in today, the sacrifices you make now, are the very things that will buy you freedom and fulfillment later. There's also a shift that happens when you embrace pain intentionally. It no longer feels like punishment. It starts to feel like purpose. When you realize that your soreness means you're getting stronger, your fatigue means you're becoming more resilient, and your struggles are teaching you how to endure, you stop resenting the process. You begin to respect it. You start to see pain not as an obstacle, but as evidence that you're on the right path. Most people won't choose this route. They'll seek comfort. They'll delay, distract, and deny. But in the end, they'll still experience pain, just not the kind that grows them. They'll feel it in lost time, missed chances, and the haunting thought of what if. But you, the one who's starting late, you already know what that feels like, and that knowledge becomes your advantage. You don't need another warning. You've had your wake-up call. Now you choose the path of challenge, of discipline, of focused effort, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. So every time the work feels hard, every time your body or mind resists, remind yourself, this is the pain that leads somewhere. This is the pain that shapes a future. You're not suffering, you're sculpting. You're not stuck, you're strengthening. And with every disciplined day, you're turning discomfort into destiny. Effort is the great equalizer. In a world where people start at different times, in different places, with different resources, effort becomes the one variable that you can control completely. You may not have the same head start as others. You may not have had the same environment, support, or early exposure to opportunity. But what you do have right now is the ability to give more. More focus, more intention, more energy, and when you do that consistently, effort begins to close the gap. Effort is not glamorous. It doesn't always show immediate results. It's the long hours when no one's watching, the small decisions repeated day after day, the choice to push forward when quitting would be easier. But over time, it compounds, it stacks up. It builds reputation, skill, character, and resilience. People who are far ahead of you may have had years of experience, but if they've grown complacent, and you're growing hungry, your consistent, focused effort will begin to close the distance. Most people underestimate how powerful effort becomes when it's applied with urgency and purpose. A late starter with the right level of hunger can overtake someone who's been coasting. That's the nature of momentum. Once it kicks in, it builds faster than you expect, but it doesn't come automatically. It's earned through action, through repetition, through refusing to be outworked no matter how far behind you started. This mindset is essential if you're trying to make up for lost time, because you won't catch up by working at the same pace as everyone else. You'll catch up by doing more, smarter, harder, and with greater intention. While others are relaxing, you're refining. While others are distracted, you're developing. And while others are maintaining, you're accelerating. That difference, sustained over time, creates results that surprise people, including yourself. Effort is also where character gets built. You begin to learn what you're really made of, not in the easy moments, but in the ones where nothing is working and you show up anyway. That's where self-trust is formed. When you follow through on your promises to yourself, day after day, you begin to believe in your own ability to change your life. You stop waiting for motivation and start leaning on discipline. You don't need to feel inspired to act. You act, and inspiration catches up later. Another truth about effort: it reveals priorities. People will say they want to grow, want to succeed, want to catch up, but their effort tells the real story. If you truly want to close the gap, your actions will show it, not just in bursts, but in patterns. The way you use your time, the sacrifices you make, the distractions you eliminate, all of it reflects how serious you are. And the more serious you are, the faster you rise. It's easy to think talent is what sets people apart, but talent without effort fades. It plateaus. Hunger, on the other hand, when sustained, keeps you moving, keeps you improving, keeps you learning. And in the long run, a hungry person who works with discipline and urgency will outperform someone with natural ability but no drive. Because while talent can give you a lead, it's effort that determines whether you stay ahead or fall behind. And the best part? You control your effort. You don't need permission. You don't need better conditions. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You just decide. You decide to show up today and do the work. You decide to give more than what's expected. You decide that you will not let your late start define your outcome. Hunger and effort together become the fuel that propels you past people who once seemed unreachable. So if you've started late, don't waste another moment looking back. You already know the cost of delay. Now it's time to pay the price of discipline. Run twice as fast, learn twice as deeply, work with urgency, live with intention, and refuse to let regret write your story. Because the race isn't over, and where you finish will never be defined by where you began. It will be defined by how hard you were willing to run once you finally decided to move.